Hey, it's Ginger with Gingerly Designs and Soulful Things, and I've had several people ask me what type of substrates I use to paint on, and I just want to share a little bit of information about some of the things that I use. I started out as a little girl. My dad always did carpentry, so my parents were always working on wood projects. My mom was a painter, my dad did the carpentry, we had to help stain, stuff like that, so it was really fun growing up with all that stuff. But as a result, wood is very natural for me, and so that is definitely what I started out with when I started as an artist. And so what we've refined is, over the years with wholesaling for so long, is I'm kind of a stickler for quality and a little bit of a perfectionist. So we take our 2x6 and 2x4 lumber that we buy, believe it or not, straight from the hardware store in big 8-foot long sticks. And once upon a time, we would fill all the holes and sand them, and then every side had like 2 to 3 coats of paint on it, and that was just the side. We had our whole system, our whole routine. My dad would then cut them into little chunks or bigger chunks, and then he would drill the back on the bigger pieces so you could hang them also. Okay, so then over time, particularly because of COVID, quality of things diminished a little. So what we decided to do was stick with making the quality of the product even better, but in-house. And so we started doing what's called ripping a board, where you actually feed a whole board through a saw to take the thin outer layer off on both sides so that it makes it a nice clean cut, because they started kind of not being as good with quality control even in the lumber stores. But we started doing that ourselves, and it made our pieces a little bit narrower, but they're so much cleaner, they're so much tidier, and they're like practically perfect as we can get it, at least. So that's kind of a big deal for me. But we really truly use 2x4s as long sticks. We paint them at certain levels and then cut them and then finish them after. And then obviously the image on the front goes on. And then we use 2x6s, same thing. We rip the sides off, make it a little bit narrower than the original board was, but it makes it a really nice, smooth piece of lumber. We also sand all the edges so there's no little splinters. So those are my little wood blocks, like gift art or anything that's this size. So basically 5x7 down, and then also sometimes we'll get to like 11 inches. Sometimes we'll even get some 2x10s that are actually not quite 10 inches wide, by the way. That's not really how it's measured, so keep that in mind. But those things, we all just use raw lumber and cut them into our pieces. But make sure if you want a good quality product, be prepared to have to sand, possibly putty some holes, sand again, lots of coats of paint, because that way it just makes sure it just stands out in a crowd if you do that, in my opinion. So you do you, but that's how I like to do it. The other thing that I often use is, again, because I grew up with my dad doing carpentry, if I want to paint bigger pieces, he makes what I call my box pieces, like this. And it is essentially cabinet grade trim molding, which is very expensive compared to the less expensive stuff, the non-cabinet grade. But they're considered a 1x2, and he makes the whole frame for me, and then he attaches the piece of plywood on top. And we mostly use like 1/2 inch. It's actually not 1/2 inch. I think it's like 7 or 5/8 or something like that. It's like a weird number, but it's essentially close to a 1/2 inch thickness. Again, cabinet grade, because I want it to be as smooth and quality as possible, because that's a big deal for me. But he attaches them for me with glue and with nails and everything, and then we put on lots and lots of layers to get to the final product, in addition to just the paint. But there's lots of undercoats of things, because I'm a texture girl, and I either like visual texture or tactile texture, but there's always texture. Just to show you what it looks like before there's a whole bunch of paint on it. This has its first 2 steps on already of product, but this is how it looks on the sides until I go through and sand them off nice and smooth and paint them and put multiple coats. There's the back again. We often will put a hanging wire, and depending on how big the piece is, we'll put like side bars to kind of reinforce the stability of it. Again, I'm all about quality control. This is one that's a little bit bigger, and basically he goes up to like, I think a sheet of plywood is 4 foot by 8 foot, so we can go as big as 4 foot by 8 foot, but we definitely reinforce it with like crossbars and bars in the corner that you have to miter to fit snug in there, so that it doesn't allow the wood to bend and twist, because it's wood. It has been mostly dried in the factory, but then you add paint and all this wet stuff, and it makes the wood moist again, and the next thing you know, it's shifting. So it's best to reinforce the wood itself, the canvas itself, so that it doesn't shift over time as it dries out. And so you want to make sure to put some beams in various places. Might have to do a whole video about that. That's probably helpful information. Incidentally, I also, though, I've said this before, I love these little dig bug panels. We can't make them for the price that I can buy them when they're this size and for the price that I can sell them. They're not cheap, but they're not ridiculously expensive. Now, Blick has like, I think 3 levels of product. They have like a student grade, I think, and then they have a studio, and then they have this Premier. The Premier is the best version, so it's a little bit more expensive, by like $1.20 or something per canvas. But when you're selling a canvas that you're going to charge 40 or 50 bucks for, really, and you know, maybe even 55 for, really, to pay the extra $1, I feel like it makes a difference, because then you don't need to worry about the wood being a little wonky or there being glue in the back and stuff like that. So I go ahead and spring for the little bit extra, the Premier. They also have price breaks. So I think it's like once you buy 12, it drops down in price a little bit. So make sure to pay attention to that, because that makes a difference. I think it's because once you get one of their cases already boxed up, it's easier for them to ship it out. So you get a little bit of a perk with that. So this is probably going to sound ridiculous, but I'm going to show you the easiest way to open them, because they're all wrapped in this plastic, which isn't a bad thing unless you're painting like 30 of them and you have to unwrap them all and you're sticking your finger in, and you can tell it's pretty rigid plastic there. So what I do is I take scissors and I go through my whole stack, and I do either just one slice that way, or sometimes, especially on the bigger ones, I go ahead and make a second one, almost like an X. Then I peel it off, and most of these things will have, most if not all, will have one of these little silicone packets in there. Don't let that bust open in your house, your studio, dog, cat, kids, you know, not good. So, and then they all have this little piece of paper, and so you end up kind of with this not large amount of trash, but a good bit of trash again, especially if you're doing like 30 of them. But the great thing is, because they're the Premier version, they are smooth like butter. You don't have to sand anything. They're fantastic. You can just, I use my hands a ton, so it's a very important thing to me. You can just easily run your finger on the edge and not worry about a splinter, because it's that Premier grade. To me, makes a huge difference. No question about it. Get the Premier, in my opinion. You try it and see what you think, but I like the Premier. So I also do love, every now and then, not every now and then, pretty frequently actually, but not as much as my wood, I do paint on canvases that are wrapped in cloth. Okay, so I'm going to explain a little something to you that I had to learn the hard way. These are, so this is a gallery wrapped canvas, and so it's like 1.5 inches deep, whereas a normal canvas is like 7/8 inches deep. So it's kind of shallow, much more shallow than this. This is gallery wrapped, and it's 1.5. This is their museum canvas, and it is 2 3/8. That's the profile, so it's super wide. I love these. I love the extra little bit of depth that it's going to hang off the wall, or it's going to sit on the shelf on a book, in a bookcase or something like that. I just love it. I feel like it makes a bigger impact on the whole look of the entire piece. But what I wanted to tell you about is that there is some of them are wrapped and stapled in the back, if you see that. And this is called hand splined when you buy that. Okay, so when you buy the hand splined, you might be able to see this in this picture. I'm gonna hold it up kind of close. You can see where the canvas kind of lifts. Okay, that's because they cut the canvas to be able to wrap it clean and then fold it in the back and spline it in nice and tidy. The other option is, I obviously prefer the splined ones because that's what I buy the most of. But the other option, instead of being hand splined, it's folded tidy in the corner, so you don't have this like cut canvas, like scissor cut canvas. It's folded tidy in the corner. The problem is it kind of makes a little bit of a lump on the back, and so then it's kind of unpredictable how it's going to hang on the wall. I'm not as much of a fan of that. And what I feel about this is I just snip any of these extra little threads off, and when I'm painting and finishing my side after I'm done with my piece, I make sure to throw a little paint under there, or if I have to, a little glue, and just press it down real firmly, just real firmly, and wrap your finger over like that, and it's going to stick down. It's not even going to show. And once you have enough paint on there, you're not even going to see it. And to me, I feel like the back looks so much better, and you don't deal with all that lumpy stuff when you're trying to hang it on the wall. So Same with unwrapping the wood canvas. You end up with this trash, silicone bag, fell on the floor. Always pick it up because dogs, cats, animals, kids, stuff like that, not a safe thing. Plus, if the bag busts, all these little balls go rolling, clear balls go rolling all over your house. It's a big pain in the butt. So anyway, just wanted to give you guys a little information because there's lots of this stuff that I didn't know when I first started out, and a lot of it's hit or miss, and you end up spending money on things that you maybe don't actually like or don't even know what the hand splined versus, I think they just call it wrapped and stapled maybe or something like that. But I didn't know that, and so I wanted to share that information with you. And you will see when you go on Dick Blick's website, the way that it's organized is by size, like by dimensions. And so you'll come to like some 4x4s, you'll come to like two different depths of 4x4s. There might be 7/8 and then 1.5 inch. They don't come these thick, these deep ones, but that's how it's set up. And then you keep on incrementally getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they sell like huge canvases. I can't imagine what the shipping is. I fortunately don't have to buy those because again, my dad builds them all for me, thank goodness. And I do those on wood because I feel like it's a lot sturdier anyway. So I hope that helps out a little bit. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Happy to help if I can. And yeah, have fun creating and take care. See ya.